You've got 24 hours to move these trucks or else. That was the text message I woke up to on a lazy Sunday morning. My heart pounded as I read it again. Move what trucks? I didn't even own a truck. Still half asleep, I scrambled out of bed, threw on yesterday's clothes, and rushed downstairs. The garage door creaked open slowly, like a scene out of a horror movie. And there they were, two massive Ford Raptors, practically glowing under the harsh fluorescent lights. Midnight, black, spotless, and clearly not mine. They looked like they belonged to some car show, not a confused suburban homeowner who drove a rusted-out Corolla. I blinked. Once. Twice. Still there. The strangest part? They were parked perfectly, backed in like a valet had done it. No broken locks, no scratches on the door. Just two trucks, sitting there like they'd always been mine. Except they weren't. I checked my phone again, hoping I'd misread the text. Nope. Same message, same vague threat. Or else. What did that even mean? I didn't recognize the number, and when I tried to call back, it went straight to voicemail. No greeting, no name, just an inbox that hadn't been set up. That's when I noticed the envelope taped to the side of the garage door. It was sealed with red wax, like something out of a Victorian drama. Inside was a typed letter and signed that said, "Non-compliance will result in sanctions as per Covenant Clause 8.3, B. No exceptions. This is your only warning." What covenant? I wasn't part of an HOA. When I bought this house 3 years ago, that was one of the things I specifically checked for. No HOAs, no random rules, no power-hungry suburban dictators with nothing better to do than measure lawn height. I stepped back, looked around, and suddenly had the unsettling realization that someone very organized had accessed my home, parked two vehicles I'd never seen before, and was now threatening me with vague consequences. And I hadn't even had coffee yet. My mind spun through 1,000 questions, but only one thing was clear. This wasn't a prank. This was personal. My name's Jake, and I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood. My house sits right on the edge of an HOA-controlled community, but I deliberately bought outside their jurisdiction to avoid their ridiculous rules. No lawn police, no paint color inspections, just freedom. Or so I thought. That morning, I called my brother Mike first. He's the only person I know who owns a Raptor. "Dude, did you park your truck in my garage?" I asked, already halfway certain of the answer. "No? Why would I do that?" he replied, sounding groggy. I sighed and looked around the garage again, still trying to make sense of it. That's when I spotted something I'd missed earlier. Two key fobs sitting neatly on my workbench, right next to my socket set, and under them a crisp sheet of paper. My stomach dropped as I picked it up. HOA violation number 47. Oversized vehicles prohibited. Vehicles stored at this address until further notice. The HOA board, what? The hell? My blood boiled. They had trespassed, broken into my garage, dumped someone else's trucks inside, without even verifying whose property it was, and now they were using my home like a personal impound lot? I stormed back into the house, dialed the number from the text again. Still voicemail. No way to reach a human being. No names, no accountability, just veiled threats, and now a couple of 6,000-pound headaches sitting in my garage. I threw on a hoodie and stomped down the street toward the HOA office. It was technically for the community across the street, but I figured someone had to be there, even on a Sunday. The building looked innocuous enough, a brick structure with a little sign out front that read East Ridge HOA, Community First. The irony nearly made me laugh. I banged on the glass door until a woman with a pinched expression opened it. "Can I help you?" she asked in a tone that made it clear she didn't want to. "Yeah," I said, holding up the note. "Why did your board break into my garage and dump two trucks there? I don't even live in your community." She blinked, as if surprised I existed. "What's your address?" I told her. Her eyes narrowed. That property was annexed last month. Annexed? You mean stolen? She crossed her arms. A vote was held. The boundary line shifted. You should have received notice. I hadn't. No mail, no email, no knock on the door, just a couple of Raptors and an ultimatum. I stared her down. This isn't over. And I meant it. Because now it wasn't just about trucks or rules, it was about the principle. And I wasn't going to let them win. I stormed to the HOA office, ready for war. The woman at the front desk, let's call her Karen, because of course her name had to be Karen, looked up from her computer with a smug little smile. Mr. Carter, she said sweetly, I see you got our notice. You broke into my property. I snapped, slamming the letter onto the counter. That's illegal. Karen didn't flinch. We have a neighborhood ordinance against oversized vehicles, she said, calmly flipping through a dog-eared rulebook like it was the Constitution. A resident reported 2 Raptors parked on the street overnight. Since the owner wasn't compliant, we towed them to the nearest available garage, yours. I stared at her. For a second, I actually thought she might be joking. Then I realized she was dead serious. I'm not even in the HOA, I said, voice rising. You can't just steal people's trucks and stash them in my house like it's a parking lot. Karen's smile widened. Check your property lines. The garage is technically within HOA boundaries. My jaw dropped. Wait, what? She pulled out a laminated map and pointed to a barely visible red line that curved awkwardly around the edge of my lot like a drunk trying to draw a circle. Sure enough, it clipped the back corner of my property right through the garage. This was approved in the boundary extension vote last month, she said, tapping the map. Homeowners were notified. Not this homeowner. She shrugged. Sometimes mail gets lost. I took a deep breath. Even if somehow my garage is in your jurisdiction, you still broke in without permission. It was an emergency relocation, Karen said, as if that explained everything. The board has authority under Section 12 of the Covenant Guidelines. I scanned the page she slid across the counter. It was filled with vague language, circular references, and something about temporary property usage under urgent aesthetic conditions. Whatever that meant. You're out of your mind, I said, balling the paper up in my fist. You can't just declare martial law on my garage. She tilted her head. You have 24 hours to comply, Mr. Carter. After that, you'll begin accruing daily fines. For trucks that aren't even mine? Karen gave a little shrug. That's not our problem. You're responsible for all vehicles stored on your property per Section 9, Paragraph B. I turned and walked out before I did something I'd regret. My phone buzzed as I stepped outside. Mike again. Dude, he said, you might want to check your backyard. My stomach sank. Why? There's a 3rd Raptor back there now. Turns out, when my house was built, the garage was accidentally zoned into the HOA due to a surveying error. The main house, driveway, and front yard were all outside their jurisdiction, clear as day. But the back corner of the garage? Just over the line. I'd never noticed. Why would I? It had never mattered before. But Karen had noticed. Oh, she definitely noticed. And now, she was using that tiny sliver of technicality to enforce the full wrath of HOA bureaucracy on my property. The smug grin she wore at the HOA office made it clear she'd been waiting for this moment. Probably had the map laminated years ago, just itching to flex her petty power. I'd had enough. I called the police. 2 officers showed up and listened patiently while I explained everything from the unauthorized break-in to the mystery trucks and the ridiculous storage fees. Then I showed them the note from the HOA and the map with the disputed boundary. They took it all in and finally said the words I'd been dreading. It's a civil matter. If the garage is technically in the HOA, they might have jurisdiction. You'll need to sort this out with a property attorney. Wait, I said, incredulous. You're telling me someone can trespass into my garage, dump 3 trucks in it, and I can't do anything? One of the officers sighed. We're not saying it's right, but it's not a clear-cut criminal issue unless there's damage or theft. This is about property lines and contracts. Civil court stuff. I was stunned, furious, trapped. To make things worse, I'd finally tracked down the actual owner of the trucks, a guy named Rob who was visiting his elderly mother across the street. Turns out he was the one who'd parked the Raptors temporarily on the curb, unaware of the oversized vehicle restriction. Rob was livid. I came out this morning and they were gone. I thought they'd been stolen. Now they're in your garage? How does that even happen? I wish I knew, I muttered. But apparently I run a valet service now. Meanwhile, the HOA was doubling down. Karen emailed me a formal invoice for temporary vehicle housing with an itemized list of daily storage fees, $150 per truck per day. Per day. She even threatened to place a lien on my property if I didn't pay by the end of the week. Karen was loving every second. I could almost hear her sipping her lukewarm chamomile tea, basking in the glow of passive-aggressive power. So now I was stuck, my garage hijacked, my property caught in a bureaucratic no-man's land, and my Sunday completely ruined. But one thing was clear. If they thought I was just going to roll over and accept this, they had no idea who they were dealing with. This wasn't over. Not even close. I wasn't about to take this lying down. I posted the whole story online. Security cam footage of the HOA, towing the trucks into my garage, Karen's smug responses, everything. The internet went nuclear. News outlets picked it up. Lawyers offered to help pro bono. And the backlash was so intense, the HOA board called an emergency meeting. Under pressure, they admitted they never had the right to enter my garage. The zoning error didn't give them authority, just a technicality they abused. 2 days later, everything unraveled. For the HOA, not for me. The trucks were returned to their rightful owner, along with a sheepish apology. The board quietly reimbursed me for the so-called unauthorized storage, likely hoping I wouldn't pursue legal action. But the real victory? Karen stepped down from the board, though I'm pretty sure she was forced out after the fiasco hit the community group chat like wildfire. And the best part? After a full review by a very apologetic city zoning official, the old surveying error was corrected. My garage, all of it, is now officially outside the HOA's reach. No more rule books, no more threats, and no more early morning truck surprises. So, what's the lesson here? Always check your property lines, twice, because somewhere tucked between the shrubs and outdated zoning maps, an HOA Karen might be lurking, just waiting to enforce a rule you never agreed to. Thanks for listening our story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more real-life stories that inspire, entertain, and sometimes make you cheer out loud.